Hi everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, we will try to understand the concept of sprint planning meeting. You can use this information in your upcoming interviews as well. If you need to contact me, feel free to send an email along with your contact details on the following email ID. So the first step is hands-on definition of sprint planning meeting that you can use in your upcoming interview. Then I will talk about the three key activities that your Scrum team should be performing in the sprint planning meeting. And then I'll talk about the structure of sprint planning meeting, where I'll tell you how much time you are supposed to spend on each of these three activities. Then we will move to the fourth step, where I'll be sharing some examples to explain the concept of sprint planning meeting. Finally, we will move to the fifth point to give you more definitions that you can use in your upcoming interviews. Let's move to the first step and talk about the hands-on definition. So if you have to explain the concept of sprint planning meeting, then you can say that sprint planning meeting is the first event of the sprint. In fact, sprint begins with sprint planning meeting. So if your sprint planning meeting starts at 10 a.m. and it ends at 2 p.m., then your sprint also begins at 10 a.m. Now there are three key activities that a Scrum team should be performing in the sprint planning meeting. The first activity is finalizing the sprint goal. Second activity is finalizing the sprint backlog. And third activity is developers sharing the delivery plan with the participants and specifically with the product owner. Let's talk about these three activities. When we say that we have to finalize the sprint goal, we are basically thinking about the deliveries of that particular sprint. Our Scrum team should understand what it has to deliver to the stakeholder by the end of this sprint. And to make sure the team understands the deliveries, we have to finalize the sprint goal. Now, once your Scrum team has finalized the sprint goal, then it has to finalize the sprint backlog as well. Finalizing the sprint backlog basically means that your developers pull relevant user stories from product backlog to the sprint backlog. These user stories are selected based on the sprint goal that your Scrum team has just finalized. And then you can move to the third step, where your developers can share the delivery plan with your product owner. By sharing the delivery plan, we are basically saying that your developers should share the approaches, the process that they will be using to complete these user stories. And while sharing these delivery plans, your developers should also highlight dependencies and risks. Let's move to the next step, which is structure of the meeting. Imagine you are organizing a sprint planning meeting and the duration of this meeting is 2 hours. So you can spend first 30 minutes in finalizing the sprint goal. Basically, your product owner and developers will have a discussion for about 30 minutes, and by the end of that 30 minutes, your developers and product owner should finalize the sprint goal. Once your sprint goal is finalized, then your product owner and developers can select stories from the product backlog. Most importantly, your developers pull these user stories from product backlog and put them into the sprint backlog. Once all the relevant stories are selected and pulled inside the sprint backlog, then you can say that your sprint backlog has been finalized. And finally, you can spend remaining 45 minutes in sharing the delivery plan. So basically, your developers have to outline the plan for delivering the sprint backlog items. So your developers have to share the approaches that they will be using to complete all the user stories, and at the same time they also have to highlight the risks and dependencies that can avoid them from achieving the sprint goal. Let's try to understand this concept with the help of an example. Imagine a data science team is participating in a sprint planning meeting of 2 hours long. Then data science team in first 30 minutes can finalize the sprint goal, and the sprint goal can sound like developing a new predictive model to forecast customer churn with 85% accuracy. So this is the sprint goal that data science team has finalized. Now in the next 45 minutes, your data science team can start pulling user stories from the product backlog. This second phase is known as finalizing the sprint backlog. And your data science team can look at the product backlog and it can find this particular story that says that as a data scientist, I want a model to predict customer churn so that we can proactively retain customers. And there are 4 tasks that your team is supposed to complete. First, collect and pre-process historical customer data. Second, develop and train the churn prediction model. Third is validating the model accuracy. And finally, documenting the model. So once your team is done selecting the user stories based on the sprint goal that it has selected, now you can move to the third stage of this meeting and you can spend remaining 45 minutes in sharing the delivery plan. So your developer A can take responsibility of task 1 and he or she can say that I will collect and pre-process the historical customer data. Similarly, developer B can take care of task 2 and C can take care of task 3, and finally developer D can say that I will take care of the documenting related part. So while sharing the delivery plan, your team should also highlight the dependencies and potential risk. It is very important to highlight dependencies and potential risk because they can avoid your team from achieving the sprint goal. So in this situation, your developer A, who is taking care of collecting and pre-processing the customer data, he can say that I have a dependency and my dependency is we need access to the customer database and historical data. To get this access, I have to raise an access request. It will be good if I may get that access as soon as possible, else my work may get delayed. Similarly, a potential risk in this case could be the data quality. If the data quality is poor, then it may impact the model's accuracy. So it will become hard for us to achieve 85% accuracy rate if our data quality is poor. So that is how your Scrum team should be participating in the sprint planning meeting. Your Scrum team should spend first 30 minutes in finalizing the sprint goal, next 45 minutes in finalizing the sprint backlog, and then finally remaining 45 minutes in sharing the delivery plan and highlighting dependencies and potential risks. This is the second example from microservice project perspective. Feel free to pause the video and have a read. Finally, these are three definitions that you can learn and you can try to come up with your own understanding and you can define your own definitions. I have already explained definition number 1. If you are interested, feel free to pause the video and have a read at remaining 2 definitions as well. So if you are finding these videos helpful, then feel free to subscribe this channel. And if you need to contact me, then feel free to send an email along with your contact details. I will try to contact you as soon as possible. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much and I will see you soon.